In this Humankind video, we're going to talk the where, when, why, and how of settling your city. As I move through into the ancient era, I'll try and choose a culture that isn't too territory specific. So I won't choose Joe, who relies on mountains. Instead, I guess I'll just choose the Egyptians. And of course, one of the first things we have to do whenever we're thinking about building anything really in Humankind is ensure that down the bottom here we have the little show hide tile output selected. That way we can always see all of the resource yields from all of our tiles. When it comes to placing down your cities, if we put strategic positioning aside for a second and pretend like that capital city doesn't exist right there, really what we're looking at is the specific city site itself. So where do I want to place my city, and what other tiles will it be absorbing into it? And then secondly, the territory as at large. So you can see the dotted line, right? I can see this one's got a river along it. Fantastic. I can see it has 3 unknown strategic resources. That's not so good for my early game yields, right? This one next door has 2 strategic known resources, horses and copper. No other ones. Okay, that's fine. This one down here does have a river. It's less fertile as a whole, but I'm quite interested in it because it has 4 total resources, and I can already see it has a luxury, this porcelain, and a copper. So I'm thinking about the territory at large, but also the city site in particular. Let's jump into a screen we're all very familiar with. When we jump into our hunting party, we go claim territory. You'll see the yields pop up, right? And the game will suggest to you, this is how it works, it will suggest to you territories that have a specifically high cumulative yield. In this case, it's these 2 territories, right? This one provides 20 industry or production and 6 food. This one provides 20 and 7 food. Now, the way that a city works in Humankind, if you don't know, it places down a main plaza or an outpost on this tile, and then when it becomes a city, which is what this is reflecting, all of the tiles around it, so the 6 tiles around it, are also sort of brought within its gathering zone, if you will. So the total yield of this tile and the 6 around it, you can see the little blue icons, the green icons around here, equal 6 food and 20 production. The downside to settling here is, of course, that I'm next to mountains. Mountains produce a lot of industry, a lot of production, but you can't build on them. So it's a little bit of a trade-off there, right? That might not be the best spot for me. So what else could I consider? Well, I could move down the river a bit and get a lot more food, right? 10 instead of 6, 10 instead of 7. Here's a 10-10, which in general I consider to be a great starting tile. A 10-10. That is a really fantastic balance. Other tiles around here, as I just mouse over them, you can see the ones on the borders are not so great, the ones next to tundra are not so great. Really, I'm left here with 2 core decisions. Do I want to settle a very productive tile and get 20 industry and 7 food? The answer is probably yes. But the other alternative would be to try and settle somewhere a little more balanced, like this 10-10. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to choose the 10-10, let's call it a 20, over a 26 or a 27. Reason being, and I would encourage you to think about this as well, that if I settle here, I can build on all of these neighboring tiles, these neighboring spots. If I settle here, well, this is a great spot for someone like Joe, a culture that benefits from being near mountains. It's harder to build on if you're trying to get a lot of adjacency bonuses. But if you just want to line things up, this is a great spot. But for this video, I'm going to take the more balanced approach, the 10 food and 10 industry tile. So if I place it down, you can see the total cost for an outpost. I'm playing on fast speed, where the total cost is 18 industry. In normal mode, it's 35. The reason why this matters is because that affects how many turns it will take you to build an outpost. So, if I was to jump over here, for example, on this unit, and try and establish an outpost, let's say on this tile, where it had 2 food and 5 industry, then on fast speed, it would take me 4 turns to establish it, because of its low industry. Likewise, if I settled on a really high industry tile like this one, which is plus 19, it would only take me 2 turns. Just like it's taking me in the capital. The one thing I want to stress here more than anything is that the number of turns required directly relates to the amount of production or industry that you settle on. And in general, it's a better idea to get your outposts built quickly. And for that reason, it tends to be a better idea to choose somewhere that's more productive and less likely to yield food in the short term, because you want your outpost to be established in as few turns as possible. You can see here, jumping through one turn, my outpost is now done. It only took me that long because I settled on an area with 10 industry, right? And really, just to reinforce that, I'm going to settle what I would consider to be a bad territory down here with this unit. I could take the 26-7. Now that I've gone Egyptians, I'm getting even more industry from all of these tiles, thanks to my legacy trait, actually. But I'm going to go down here to this rather pathetic 2-8, and you can see it's going to take much longer. It's going to take me 2 more turns after this first one to establish it, because I still need the same amount of industry to build it, but I'm producing less in this city and the neighboring territories, because you guessed it, the tiles are relatively crappy because I'm only actually getting 3. The other upside to settling Memphis here, as opposed to in the more productive and suggested zone, as I mentioned earlier in the video, is the fact that now we have land to build on, right? If we'd settled in this valley, when I go to build my pyramids, I can put them down and get one adjacent district, right? Picture this, city here, pyramid here, adjacent district here. I'd have to wait a while to build my way out and get it to an area where I could actually start to utilize it. But here, in this city, I can go smash it out straight away. Now I'm thinking, okay, where do I want to place it? Well, if I build it here, it's next to a strategic resource. If I build it here, it's next to one. If I build it here, it's next to these mountains. I'm going to choose somewhere fairly open that still has relatively high yields, although not the best, and I'm going to place it here. Reason being, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles, so I can choose my maker's quarter, right, and eventually get 5 surrounding my pyramids, which is ideal for them, of course, because they benefit from being adjacent to other makers' quarters. The other upside was that this territory was going to give me more food, right? It was going to give me 10, now 11, whereas the other one would have only given me 6 or 7, and that matters because, of course, food equals population growth. The more excess food I have, the faster my population will grow. So there is still a trade-off to consider, and while industry is important to getting outposts established quickly, you will still need a supply of food to grow your people and to eventually have citizens in here that you can reassign depending on which yields you want to earn. Now, don't forget, if you do place an outpost down like Rastaban and it's not so hot, you can always relocate it for a small price. In this case, I'm definitely going to choose to do that because there are definitely better locations for this outpost to be established. And I think in this case, as I pan around, you can see now it's telling me the difference between this new tile and the old one. And look at that whomper of a difference. +5, +19. The other thing to consider when you're settling early territories is around getting borders and adjacencies, right? So if I settled this city here and this one relocates to, let's say, here, I could get some nice adjacency between the territories. Of course, the other option in Humankind, if you want to get adjacencies, is literally just to hoover them up and attach outposts and cities together. So it's not always required, but it does make it a little bit easier, particularly in the early game, to build districts next to each other, between or across territories. The other thing to remember, and here I've lucked upon Mount Roraima, is that if you do find a natural wonder like this naturally wonderful mountain, it will provide you with +5 influence if you settle on the territory. And influence, of course, is the key currency that we need to be able to establish more outposts, so it can be worthwhile establishing near one of these bad boys too. Once you unlock this wonderful district, the Harbour, your options open up a little bit. Reason being, and if we have a look at where Harbour is, you can see it's pretty easy to get, right? Carpentry into fishing. The Harbour is a food district, but unlike these other districts, it has something a little bit special about it. You can purchase it not just like I'm doing here in Memphis, right? Let's say I want to build a harbour, I smash one down there, it provides a bit of food to the city, that's great. But as many Humankind players will undoubtedly already know, if you go to one of your outposts, you can build harbours or resource extractors, right, like this artisan's quarter here on this luxury, you can build these outposts or harbours with influence. What that means is, actually, it's a game changer, because all of a sudden, now that you have harbours unlocked, when you establish your outposts, you can afford to be even more aggressive and even more in favour of industry, right? So all of a sudden, one that's, say, 20 or 25 industry and something like 4 or 5 food is actually totally fine. Not only should you already have cities established where you can build, say, farmers' quarters or improve your infrastructure to earn more food, but now, crucially, you have a way to turn an outpost into, all of a sudden, a slightly more prosperous one. Let me show you why. So let's take Rustabarn as an example, because it's a dang good one. You can see at the moment the outpost is earning 30 industry and a measly 6 food. That means that it's going to take a long time, even for just its 4 population, the population limit of an outpost, to be built up, right? Look at this, 4 turns to go from 1 pop to 2. That is incredibly slow, and it's because I only have access to 6 food. This is, after all, a fairly dry and barren landscape, except for this river tile here, but even most of it's cut off in this adjacent territory. Anyway, with the measly price of 20 influence, I can place down a harbour. Now, these harbours are unlikely to be too good because I don't have a religion yet, I don't have any infrastructures or any other kind of upgrades for them, but even here, I mean, this isn't terrible, it's plus 6 food. Right, so I click that, it's built instantly, thanks to building it with influence rather than industry. And now have a look. The territory is all of a sudden producing 12 food and 30 industry, and its population growth speed has increased. In fact, it's doubled. That's beautiful and fantastic, and you can do this in every coastal territory that you settle, even some inland ones if they have lakes. It's a game changer, and it allows you to instantly add food to an otherwise starving or near starving territory. And of course, if you want to be real extra for experts about it, now that I've added food to this territory, I can do something special with Memphis. Memphis, the city next door, can attach Rustabarn to itself. And actually, as luck or unluck would have it, Memphis is starving because I haven't built any food infrastructure here. I've been focusing purely on my wonderful pyramids. So, what can I do? Well, I can attach Rustabarn. And now, Memphis isn't starving, and the people of Rustabarn, or the one person, have joined Memphis, right? Their populations have come together, and I've prevented Memphis from starving. And you know what? The only reason I was able to do that is because of this harbour. Literally a game changer for future outposts and connecting cities together, but for reasons you might not think of. And of course, there are lots of other benefits to doing it as well that I don't need to go into this video, but it does of course help your builder stars first and foremost by building more districts, and of course those crucial agrarian ones by eventually feeding and growing more population. Here's another small interesting example. So here I could settle on a 13.5, not bad. Here's an 11.11, that's pretty good. Down here though, is a 9.17, and I think this will again prove the real power of establishing with a harbour. Let's take a look. So, whammo, place that one down. It's going to finish in 1 turn because it was a highly industrious area as opposed to going for that balance, say, between food and industry. And now, with a really low price of 14 influence, I can jump over and... Here's an interesting conundrum. I could place it here for the immediate 7 food, or I could place it up here in the hopes that in future these harbours would be able to work together, right? Get some sort of shared adjacency. Maybe I build another harbour here with a future culture and they really benefit from it. There is a really interesting one because it essentially acts as a land bridge. Oh, I love that. That is great. Not a very smart decision, but a great one. I'm going to build it here in the hopes that eventually these harbours will be able to share and grow and prosper together. And of course, it's elevated the food up for this territory, and now it's on a fairly even footing, right? 13 food, 17 industry. If I'd built it down here, they would have almost been identical. The last consideration really is your strategic positioning, right? And I think that I won't cover this too much in this video, but there are some important things to share briefly. Firstly, obviously, there is a strategic position to defend or attack from. If you're looking to go on the aggressive, it's much easier to pump units out of a city right here and attack a city right here. Likewise, it's easier for your opponent too. Of course, as you go through, you'll pick up city defense, you'll get these garrisons, and you can build forts on your borders, that's all fine and good. There are, however, some soft power considerations as well, right? In the civics screen, you can see here, my society is already being over-influenced and pressured by theirs. I've already lost control of my societal influence. Why? Because I settled so close to my neighbour. Or they settled so close to me. Whoever is at fault, it doesn't matter. The important thing to consider is that sadly, I will be swallowed up by them, or likewise, if I had a particularly influential start and if I wasn't playing on a really hard difficulty, I might be able to swallow up them. So it could go either way. The same is true for your religion when you get your religion unlocked. Neighbouring territories, it's the easiest place for it to spread, even easier than trade routes and so on and so forth. Also, when you're building holy sites, if you build them on these neighbouring territories, they'll push more pressure across. So really across the board, it's a dangerous game, and you need to be prepared to defend yourself, otherwise it's a risky strategic position to hold. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video about really focusing on where and how to settle territories and grow them into cities in the early game. Once you get to this point, you use your really powerful early game infrastructure like the granary or what have you, say the animal barns that sort of stack and multiply with horses, whatever it is, you should be in a position after establishing your territories, hooking them up with harbours and connecting at least one together. You should be in a great position to really kick off, get the rest of your fame through the ancient era, and start the game right. Thank you very much for watching. My name's been JumboPixel, and I'll see you next time.